Hi, I'm Arlene, host of the television talk show Ask Arlene, which airs on Thursdays at 6:30. And as a business consultant and life coach, I help you to move forward in your business, project, or endeavor. So if you always wanted to write a book, but you just haven't seemed to get started, or you always wanted to 10x that business that you already have, expand it to the next level, you know exactly what you need to do, but you just haven't done it? Well, I've already purchased all the courses, read all the books, the Tony Robbins, all sorts. I have several degrees, including a master's degree and credits toward a doctorate. I've sat with and met celebrities and done the networking. And what I realized is what I really needed was a mastermind group of people working toward my project, my business, or my endeavor. So what I've done is met with coaches and met with experts and put them together to work on your project. So join us today for our mastermind networking group. I'll see you there. Click the link below and join us.
Hello and welcome to the Ask Arlene Show. It's a pleasure to join you today again. We're on every Thursday evening at 6:30. We have a great show planned for you today. We have two special guests, not one, but two. Today we have Tonya Harris of 107.5 WRUU Radio, the Outreach Radio Show. We also have Miss Teressa Yirenkyl of King David's Recovery, LLC, Limited Liability Corporation. And that organization works with people who are survivors of domestic violence. I am your host, Arlene. It's a pleasure to join you. And without further ado today, we're going to meet these two wonderful ladies. I want to remind you, though, to go to join our mastermind group so that you can be getting all of this information and talking with us while we're on air at bit.ly/AskArlene, or go to the website where you can chat with us at askarleneshow.com. That's askarleneshow.com. So participate with us, ask us questions so that we can have you participate in this particular show. Hi, Tonya.
Hello, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. And thank you for having me as a guest on your show.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Now you are in the sunny skies of Atlanta, Georgia, Savannah, Georgia. Is it warm down there?
Yes, the sun is shining. I'm looking out the window now. It's beautiful.
I wish I could say the same. Where we are, it is cold. It has been snowing. So we're just, holding on, though, holding on. Now, you do some great work down there. You're doing outreach. You're helping people, touching lives, changing lives. You've been doing this, you said, since you were 4 years old. And your organization not only helps people with food, but you're also helping people from a spiritual perspective as well. So tell us a little bit about that work that you're doing down there.
Yes, we do quite a bit of outreach here locally. I'm Lady T on the Lady T, Lady M Outreach Radio Show, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. And we do quite a bit of outreach, partnering with other nonprofit organizations, local churches, businesses, individuals that are just doing great things to give back, give back part of what you have, what you've received, and sharing and caring about
So
the
what made
community
you
that we're
start
in.
that show? What made you decide that you wanted to do radio? Because you have another profession all this time. You were actually a legal paralegal. So what made you
Yeah.
go into the radio business and decide you wanted to help people?
Um, I've kind of done a little bit of media for years also, but not as a profession. I just did a stint of a short talk show on Channel 17 in Miami. And then a friend of ours locally here, actually my daughters who are adults, grown women, one of their friends, he's a talk show host as well. And he invited my daughters onto the show to talk about one of their businesses, Empire Video Gaming Center. And they weren't available the day that he booked them. So he said, well, can Mama Empire come on the show? And he invited me on the show. He said, you know what? We need a show. Like, we need to hear your voice. Like, what would you like to do? Let me introduce you to the studio director, and so that you can start a show. What would you like to do? And I said, if I'm going to do a show about anything, it would be outreach. As I
Mm.
spent 10 years in New York, and that was one 10-year period of my adult life that I didn't do as much outreach as I had been accustomed to most of my adult life. So I said, this is a perfect opportunity to find out what's going on in the community
Well,
and
New
participate.
York is very fast paced, and New York has a lot of things going on. So a lot of people, when they move out of the city and they go to like Savannah, Georgia, or they go down to Florida, because I live down there as well. Sometimes because the pace is different, it more facilitates,
Yeah.
that kind of outreach and people giving, and you have an opportunity to talk to people more. Like now in the city, it's cold. Most people are inside. Granted, it's Corona too, so we're even more inside and not speaking to each other. But just the fast-paced environment and us being far away
Right.
from each
So
other, we're
true.
less likely to communicate. So you are somebody who has lived a wonderful life. You have two beautiful daughters, grown daughters. You have a granddaughter as well. You have your own business where you're spreading the word. But I'm sure that you had challenges along the way, things that you had to encounter that you overcame in order to be where you are. So share with us a little bit about that so that we can glean from your wisdom.
Yes. I will say this, that, one of my favorite sayings about getting to the next level of anything that you're doing is that sometimes you have to let go of what you're doing to get
Mhm.
there.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And I've had that experience in the legal field. I've had that experience in life in general, from being a paralegal at a low paying firm to saying, I love what I'm doing, but I'm just not earning the income that I want to live
Right.
the lifestyle that I want.
Mhm.
And so I've walked away sometimes without knowing what the new job was going to be, the new career, even relocating here to Savannah. I'm not from Georgia, don't have family here other than my two adult daughters who relocated here,
With
one
you.
for business. And I've relocated here, leaving, a six-figure career up there and coming here with no business to start up again. But
Okay.
just having faith and knowing that, what is for me is for me.
That's
And
beautiful. I don't want to gloss over that.
yeah,
That is key.
thank you.
What is for me, it is for me. And it doesn't matter, whatever else is going on. We've got to step into our greatness and be where we're supposed to be and live the life that we're called to live. So sometimes people may lose a position and they're very distressed. But the concept is that if you're doing all the things that you're supposed to do and you're asking and seeking an alternate route, a better route, and then this door closes, the concept is, well, then there's another door that opens that you should be walking through and something else that you should be doing that's actually better. And that's what you did.
That I can say amen to over and over and over again. Okay.
Wow.
One of my daughters told me when she was a teenager, and I didn't experience any failures in education. I made straight A's and you did all the things they tell you when you follow the yellow brick road. And
Right.
so she experienced some struggles, and I was really upset. I'm like, I don't know what else to do. I've gotten you tutoring, I've done this. And she said, Mama, failure is not failure. She says the end result. You learn from your children. And
And
I
there's
said,
really
wow.
no such thing as failure because
Yeah,
as long as you have life, there's hope. So if you're dead, then okay, you can't come back. But as
right.
long as you're still living, you can make a comeback. So a little bit about my story. I was working, you said you were working in the corporate world with a 6-figure job. Well, I was working in the corporate world as well. I had a great, well, I'm not going to say great position, but I was working in the corporate world. Ripping and running, okay? And whether I enjoyed it or not, I was there. And I worked with companies like AIG, and then I moved on to be the president of several chambers of commerce. And I got recruited from New York to go clear across the country to run a chamber of commerce. And out of 300 people, I was the one that was recruited and selected. And so I was on the TV, and I was on the newspapers, and I was on the cover of the magazines. But then the new board came in, and they wanted their own person. And so subsequently, I got fired. But I didn't just get fired, Tonya, Lady T. I got publicly fired just because it was a public position. Right. So my picture was on the cover of the newspaper. Can you imagine waking up and it said fired across it? And I was stuck. I was really stuck. And then my mom passed away subsequent to that. And then I was even more stuck. So I started reading the books and, getting the tapes and going to conferences in order to get up and try to move forward. And that's how I got into coaching and met some great coaches, and which is why we're here today talking about how to move forward, how to get unstuck, how to be empowered after you've gone through challenges. So I want to be able to bring in Miss Teressa Yirenkyl, who is head of the nonprofit organization that helps women who have been survivors of domestic violence, so that she can be part of the conversation. Hello, Teressa.
Hi, Arlene. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Wonderful. Wonderful to have you. Now, Teressa, you live in Georgia. What part of Georgia do you live in?
No, I don't live in Georgia. I'm in the sunny state of Florida. It's close, though.
My other state. That's why I was talking about Florida, because I used to live in Florida. But the reason why I'm asking, too, is because you were originally from where we are. You're originally from the New York area. Correct? Was I right about that?
That's correct. I'm a South Ozone Park girl. Yes,
so
my dad was
area, but then you moved down to the sunny skies of Florida, and we're very happy that you're with us. So you're in the sunshine too. You're not feeling the pain like we are. But so tell us a little bit about the good work that you're doing down there in Florida.
Well, King David's Recovery, we're a nonprofit, a 501c corporation, as you mentioned. And what we do is we help survivors, victims of any type of abuse, be it physical, verbal, domestic violence. And we support them with transitional housing, just any type of support that they may need to get out on their own, to get away from their perpetrator. Because a lot of times you'll find that most people in domestic violence, they'll stay in. I'm a domestic violence survivor myself, so I went through a long 21 years during a marriage of abuse, and that's in your eyes, yes. When it
I'm
came
sorry to hear that.
It was a learning experience, and I'm glad I had to go through it. It was just a process that I had to go through to get where I am today. And, I thank God that he brought me out of it. He brought me out of it alive and able to help women, because so many people who go through domestic violence, they just suffer in silence. I always had a story to tell you. One time, I had carpet burns on my forehead and on my chin. My husband my ex had gone ahead and pulled me through that. And what I did was I was like, I was out on my bike, I was riding, I fell. I always had a good story to tell you for any sort of scar that was visible, but nothing could heal those emotional scars, the things that kept me stuck, until I really surrendered, all of them to the Lord and asked him to help move me forward. And he was the only one that could do it. Even though I was married to a pastor, accountant. Yeah, the story.
Wow. That's giving pastors a bad name.
No, well, not all pastors are bad, not all, but that temptation is out there for everyone. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of women in the church who suffer from that because they don't want to come forward and say, what's going on. I just had to peacefully, get out of that situation. And out of it, we were able to produce a book called Power of the Voice. And in this book, it's a collaboration of 4 women, and we all tell our stories, what we've been through and where we've been able to go from the experience that we've had.
Okay, so tell us how you were able to come out of that. So you had 24 years of challenges. As far as the domestic violence piece, I can relate, because in my situation, I was married and I had a mental type of situation where he wasn't physically abusing, but he was mentally abusive. And I didn't know that that's considered domestic violence until the end, when we were talking to the experts, and they say, absolutely, that's domestic violence. So there are many people who may be encountering these challenges from a negative perspective, and they don't even know that they're a part of this group. And many times they say, well, women who have gone through this challenge, well, maybe they were not as educated, maybe they didn't know, but I was very well educated. I was in the political arena, and yet and still, I was not aware that that's what I was encountering. So tell us how you were able to overcome it. What did you do to move forward? How did you get to where you are now, where you're winning?
The number one thing was, my life in the Lord. That was number one. He was able to go ahead and lead me. And besides that, I refused to start accepting all of this. I had to finally say enough is enough. And what was that enough is enough? During 2012, I took 3 bites. And a human bite, you'd have to, besides, I never even thought of it at the time.
3 bites?
Bites, yes. The last one was a bite in the back. And with that bite in the back, I had to think about rabies. I had to think about all of these things.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Yes.
I don't even think I can handle this. And you're just telling me the story. I'm not experiencing it, but just the sheer terror, the horror of this. That
still wasn't enough for me to get out, Arlene. That, what was enough for me to get out was when his mistress decided to file charges against me, because she had called him at the office, and I had picked up the phone and said, stop calling him, and hung up. And that was enough when she decided she was going to try to press charges, and he gave her all of the information about me to press these charges. And I said, I've never been to jail. I've never encountered anything like this with the police. I said, this is it. I have to get out. And God, you have to show me how to get out.
Okay. So this is something that's very interesting. And I'm going to invite Tonya, Lady T, to come back in. Can we bring Lady T back in? So there are so many people who are anti-God or anti-religion. They don't feel like, it's what some people say it's cracked up to be. And one of the challenges that we have, because I am a believer, is that people say, well, it doesn't work. And so we say, well, it works if you work it. If you don't work it, then it's not going to work.
Right.
It's so interesting to me, and I'm asking both of you to discuss this with me, that when we've done this show now for almost a year, we've done it since COVID in March, and many of the people who are on the show have said, I've had challenges. I've had something that prevented me from moving forward, much like my situation, which is why they're on the show. And now they're living their best lives. And many of the people say, I was a godly person. I went to church, I read the word, and yet I was stuck in the dark. And then I had this rebirth, I had this transition. So can you both share with us, share with our audience, what was the difference? What was the distinction between being a part of the body of religious people and ungodly, but being in the dark, and then now making this transition where you're both successful business women, you're no longer in that challenging situation, but you're still walking that journey. What shifted for you that made you see more clearly than you were seeing before, even though you were a part of the body of?
For me, the number one thing was I had to get that relationship with God. I had to know him as my father. I had to completely trust him through whatever I was going through, knowing that
you weren't trusting him before.
Pardon me?
So is it that you feel like you weren't trusting him before when you were going through the journey, through the challenge?
through the initial part of the challenge, like I said, I was married to a pastor. I supported him. I was there by his side. I didn't have that personal relationship that I needed for myself with God. I would read the word, but I didn't have that one-on-one with my Father that I needed to have, and know that I could, no matter what I was going through, he was going to be there for me.
Okay, Lady T, what do you say?
Well, I too, like Teressa, have been married to a minister. I'm a divorcee as well.
I was married to a preacher too. We all.
Oh my God.
That's not a very good testimony, guys. You realize that, right?
But I did not suffer from abuse, though the marriage ended in divorce.
Okay.
And I will say that I do understand what Teressa is saying, because I have seen those experiences from other women as well. We did a lot of women gatherings, like I've got issues meetings, and where we would talk about concerns and issues among ourselves, women of Christ, and many times there were concerns with some women that they hadn't spent the time they needed with God, and there were some times when they did, and their relationship with God didn't change. Their relationship with themselves changed, including myself. When you decide, I'm going to divorce this man of God who I know and I believe is a man of God, but this marriage is not working. And it doesn't always mean it's a physical or emotional abuse, but what's good for you. And so sometimes it just comes to, I'm going to do what's good for me. And too often when people are in ministry, the spouse, whether it's the pastor, the wife of the pastor, the husband of a minister, we think that our will is God's will. And so when people are praying too often, one thing my ex-husband used to say is that he had to be careful when he was praying, because many times he had to be careful of the voice he was hearing. Was it God's voice or was it his voice?
Okay, before we move on, I want to ask you about your relationship with other things. So while you were going through the valley of darkness, you had your business already. And was that going well? Was your business successful, even though the personal issues were taking place? Or the business was not successful and your marriages were challenged and, pretty much things were in disarray?
Well, for myself, businesses were going well.
Right.
Business is booming, and still have to make a decision, like, and what do you care more about? And I'm a firm believer that your source of income, your work is not your source of income. It's just a means. Your source is God, and you can, it's up to you whether or not you mentally and emotionally make that physical decision. Exactly.
Question for you, Teressa. Were you doing well in your professional life while your marriage was having problems?
I had a 6-figure income. I had been in retail for a number of years. My mom passed, and I was like, okay, Lord, whatever door you're going to open for me. Then he took me into the transportation industry, and I had a good career in that industry. But then just one day he said, okay, after, I had gone through the divorce and after everything was pretty much settled, he goes, okay, now this is what I want you to open up this door. And, you've got to, tell your story to help other people out there, because there's so many people out there that are just suffering in silence.
Okay, this is why I asked this question, because in my travels, I was also quite successful while I was having the challenge in the marriage prior to the divorce. I was a director at a position. I was being recruited left and right, moving up the ranks. I was known in the community, in that business community. I was down in Florida. But the only challenge was this glaring red light. And what I've done is asked other women. And what I've heard one of the Kennedys say this, and this is why I'm bringing it up. She said, women who are successful in business with children and with career and with marriages tend to not be able to be successful in all three. So you can be a successful businesswoman and great with your children, but then you're going to have a challenge with your marriage, or you have a great marriage and you don't do any business. Your career is maybe, very minimal or non-existent, but you have a great relationship with the kids. So the thing is that you can't have all three. Now, in my challenges, I have become aware of this concept of your words and the power of your words and your thoughts. So perhaps that has something to do with it as well, that maybe I heard this concept and so I lived it out. But in interviewing other women, I found that that seems to be a similar thing. Like, look at President Obama's wife. She was a phenomenal career woman, but then she has this great husband. She has great kids, but she was no longer working in her professional capacity. I mean, prior to being the first lady, that was, on a lesser level than it would have been. So I just want to know what you think of that.
I can attest to that. And even with Michelle Obama, she had struggles in her marriage while her career was booming, because there was this balance, especially when you have two professionals, this balance of who's going to be the homemaker. And that was her struggle in her marriage. Like, I'm being this homemaker, I'm being this professional, and I'm being a single parent because you're being a professional, but you're not being the homemaker. And so I think that's where the imbalance comes. And as well as with my husband, with my husband who was a minister, he didn't get quite that balance, that you still got to be this homemaker, you're being this professional, and then you have this ministry. And so you've got all these things going on, and you have to make sure that that marriage survives and is fed as much as your career and as the children are. And too often we just don't stop to do that. Take the time and plan it as well as we do our careers. And women, and last note is that women, just from my own studies, because I tell people, if you have an issue or concern, study it, and studying human behavior, women are more, they feel a success when their family's successful.
Okay.
Men feel a success when their career is successful.
Okay, we have just a few minutes left before we sign off. The time is far spent, but I know, Teressa, you also have a degree, your undergraduate degree in psychology. Is that correct? So what
That's correct.
That is correct. Okay, great. What do you say as far as this?
I think, that's exactly it. I want to have it all, but, realizing, you have to work at it. Right now, I'm, I'll be able to work at it successfully because I'm by myself. It's myself, and Jesus is right there with me, leading and guiding me each and every day. So, but I believe you can still have it all. A number of us, as I mentioned earlier, we had to get a book out, Power of the Voice, to let women know that you can still have your voice. You don't have to lose your voice. And in going through all of this, you still have that. You don't have to lose all of it. You just have to plan a little bit better.
Yes.
Okay. So we know that we want it all. Teressa's answer is to plan a little bit better. Tonya's answer, Lady T's answer, is to also gain balance. But neither of the three of us seem to really have been able to get that balance when we were in that journey, but we've certainly been successful at the other two. So for the next part two of the show, because the show is pretty much over for today, we're going to talk about how we're able to get all three and win in all three areas.